we don't have to do it all by ourselves. For those that's not familiar with this passage of scripture, those that know me, they know I love music. And in this chapter, I guess it's best put together with the lyrics of Peaches and Herb, because here we have Moses and his boo thing being reunited, and it feels so good. You see Jethro, also known as called the father-in-law of Moses and the priest of Midian, hearing the deliverance from which God had granted Israel, took Zipporah and her two sons, Gershom and Eliezer, and brought them to Moses because they'd been with him since Moses was going back to Egypt. And he sends to Moses announcing his arrival. And when they link up, Moses, he wanted to tell him what was going on. He gave him a rundown of God's dealing with the Israelites. And Jethro, he was ecstatic, and he rejoiced at the power and the goodness of Jesus. And he proceeded in offering burnt offerings and sacrifices to Jehovah, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel to feast with him. Some of us would say they broke bread together. But, if you hang around somebody long enough, or at least if you pay enough attention to them, you'll also begin to notice a few things. Because as a people, we got to realize that we got some good ways about us, and we got some ways that can be improved if you're willing to learn the lesson in the process. And Jethro noticed the very next day that Moses was wore out. He was fatigued by being obliged to sit as the judge and hear the causes from sunset to nightfall of the children of Israel. And him being inquisitive, some would say nosy, he wanted to know why, only to be given the response from Moses that he was obliged to determine the causes between man and to teach them the statutes and laws of God. But see, Jethro wasn't having that, because somebody that really has some compassion for you, they'll keep it real, they'll keep it 100. And he counseled Moses to learn to delegate, to appoint some God-fearing men of love, truth, and haters of covetousness to be judges over the masses. I believe the scripture said thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And he told them to let them deal with the small stuff and only to come with him with the major. Why? To prevent burnout. And see, as a CEO of an enterprise, I had to learn the power of delegation to prevent burnout. Because sometimes you can stretch yourself to a certain capacity to where you're bound to break. I use the analogy of a rubber band. A rubber band, once taken out of the pack, it's real tight. It can bind things together. But if you put too much into it, it'll eventually begin to stretch and show signs of weariness until it reaches the point of popping, and then it can't be used at all. And see, that's how we are as a people. You see, Moses was a man. A pastor is a man. A CEO is a man or a woman. A father is a man. A woman is a man. And you, just in case you didn't know today, you are a person. And you have to have the ability to delegate to save your life, to save your ministry, to save the businesses that God gave you so your vision doesn't die. For those that are married, to save their relationship, to save the marriage. And for those that's trying to get married, to show your partner that they matter. So they'll be willing to put a ring on it. But you don't have to be everywhere and try to do everything. That is what I learned, because I used to work from sunset to sunrise. I get up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Some days I didn't go to bed till 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And I think there are many others that are also burning that midnight oil. But see, it is not possible to do everything, because something will be left neglected. You will have some 20%ers. You may be successful at one, but you don't realize that the rest of what you're responsible for, it is dying. And sometimes you don't realize it until it's too late. And see, but Moses, he took the warning, because see, sometimes warning comes before destruction. And he appointed the officers, as his father-in-law had suggested, over the people to function in the capacity and the purpose that they were called to do, handling the minor and only coming to him with the major stuff. And once that took place, Jethro went back to his own country. So with that being said, I believe in life application, because some people, they don't know the 66 books of the Bible, but they understand the day-to-day process. And I believe that many of us, we own a dictionary. And the word delegate is defined as the ability to empower or to entrust another. It's to empower another to complete a task or an assignment. And it's a definition that seems so simple, but yet it's the hardest thing to do. Why? Because many fail to realize that as the leader, it is their job to see that the works get done, but not necessarily to do all the work themselves. That is a lesson that I learned. You know, I wanted to be the administrator, the web designer, the graphic designer. I wanted to be the communicator. I wanted to be the customer service rep. But when life hit me with a devastating blow, I had no choice but to shut it down. And there comes a time in your life to where pain doesn't make an announcement. Death doesn't come with a countdown. And it's in those moments to where you realize all of the things that you're necessarily with that can hold you down until you have the ability to stand back up on your own. So the first point that I wanted to bring to this lesson today in regards to delegation is that sometimes we create barriers knowingly and unknowingly. You see, with me, I adopted the principle after being disappointed by certain people, that it is easier to do it myself. You know, I know how I want it, but then it doesn't always work out. Even a car has multiple parts that function in its own capacity to keep it moving forward. But you would never find the engine questioning the transmission, just as spark plugs serve their purpose like windshield wipers. You see, sometimes we also put up barriers, lacking confidence in the abilities or dependencies on others due to being burned, being let down, and being disappointed. You see, there are some people that broke promises. There are some people that said, you know what, if you need me, call me. But when you called them, they were nowhere to be found. There were some people that said, you know what, I'll hold you down. I'll help you get there. But many people won't help you get there until you get there, because everybody wants to take part in success. But many people don't want to lay the bricks that it takes in order to become successful. And you see, many talk about doing the work. Many talk about doing the work, but few have what it takes or the willingness to be able to get the work done. You see, I believe in today's times we have a ton of supervisors, but we have few laborers, because many want to dictate, but few want to execute. We have, I guess Grandma would say it best, we have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. But secondly, once we learn that lesson, we must know when to delegate, because there is a time and a place for everything. You won't have your toddler driving you to the pharmacy because they're not mature enough for it. But see, in life, we got to realize that we all have a breaking point, or better yet, a peak capacity of performance. Because see, we're only given 24 hours in a day, although some of us feel as if we need 30. And therefore, we must effectively delegate when our responsibilities become greater than our capacities. You see, and that is speaking in the terms of your intellect, your time, your energy, and your abilities. Because what I learned is that I'm a very intelligent person, but when you're broken, when you can't see your way out, when you're battling depression and anxiety, or most importantly, when your body is just completely worn out to the point to where you don't have the energy to even muster up to get out of bed, you got to have somebody that can take care of those things for you. Because if your vision dies when you die, you didn't delegate accordingly. You see, you can't do it all, and no man is all-knowing. A well-oiled machine requires the multitude. Your vision that I believe that God has given each and every one of you, it requires teamwork, because many of us say teamwork makes the dream work, but do we truly have the team to get the work done? You see, I'm an athlete, tomboy, kind of turned girly in this time, but I love to hoop all the way through college. And I realized that even the NBA requires 5 people to be on the floor at all times, but the coach and the assistant coach is always on the sideline, calling plays, but letting people do what it do. You see, the coach isn't the point guard, and he may not be as tall as the center, but he has the people in their respective places doing what it is that they're supposed to do so everybody can get the victory. You see, and that's exactly what we have here. Moses, the delegator, he recruited and he executed. Because see, sometimes the quickest way to level up, truthfully, is to level down and to admit to yourself that life would be a whole lot easier if you just had some help. You see, real leaders create other leaders. And it was in this time of loss to where I realized, I said, God, I thank you that I learned the lesson of teaching the people, but I was really forced to turn over my plate and say, I can't handle this. Because see, sometimes you gotta be humble enough, just like Moses, and say, I can't do this by myself. I'm not gonna go too much into it because I have another lesson for tonight which will hit on that, because he had his left hand and his right hand with him. Because when the body is too weak to be able to stand, you got somebody that can hold you up in order to get the victory. You see, so as I continue to study this text, I always ask the question, what does the Bible say? And that brought me to Psalms, if you all can take a moment to turn there. The book of Psalms, chapter 8, verse 4 through 8. The book of Psalms, chapter 8, verses 4 through 8. And it reads, "What is a man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honor. Thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, yea, and the beasts of the field, the fowl of the air, and the fish of the sea, and whatsoever passeth through the paths of the sea." And what I took from there is God was the ultimate delegator. You see, for those that take the time to study the word, or even if you didn't get too far past the beginning of the Bible, the book of Genesis, we learned that from the jump, God entrusted his creation with some flawed people, some sinful people, some imperfect people, some people that made a bunch of mistakes. Because, see, oftentimes we feel as if in order to be a leader or to be able to put certain people in certain positions, we're looking for perfection, and that's non-existent in any man. You see, God doesn't even require perfection. This walk doesn't. It requires maturity, meaning that I'm capable of doing what it is that you're asking me to do because I'm mature to be able to handle the responsibilities that God is telling you to entrust me with. And see, here we have that God, if we continue to just look through this text, God made all of them animals, all those lions and tigers and bears. I believe Jasmine Sullivan sung about them. But he also had a man named Adam to name him. You see, yes, he did provide a very intricate blueprint and specificities as it relates to the ark, but he gave Noah the assignment to build it and who to put on it once it was done. So if God could delegate, why can't we do the same? And that's why I chose this passage today, because I used to want to be in control. And it wasn't until my life got out of control that I had to give God back control and to entrust those that he had there for me, because I didn't want the vision to die. And I tell a lot of people, in order to keep the vision alive, make sure that you give yourself the opportunity for self-care. But you can't take that break unless you're willing to break up your responsibilities into the people that you're surrounded by. But even after God, we can take a closer look at his son Jesus. You see, because he lived by the same principles in his earthly ministry. Jesus had his disciples baptizing other people. He had them preparing a place for the Last Supper. I believe he had those same disciples helping to feed the 5,000. And there's so many other things that we could discuss. But see, I'd rather talk to you about talents, a short parable about that I believe was delegation. So the last place that we're going to turn to today is the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. And it reads, and you can, if you don't have the time, you can go back and read it for yourself. We can study to show thyself approved. "For the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling into a far country, who called his servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, and another 2, and another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway took his journey. And then he had received the 5 talents, went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he had received 2, he also gained 2, the other 2. But he that had received 1 talent went and digged in the earth and hid his Lord's money. And after a long time the Lord of those servants cometh and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and bought the other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest us unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, and I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. And he said unto him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, and I will make thee ruler over many. Enter into thy joy for thy Lord. Then he which had received 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou had not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sowed, and gather where I have not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money in the exchanges, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore thy talent from him, and give it unto him which thou hast 10 talents. For unto every one that hath been given, he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away, even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And what we have here is, as we take a little closer at this scripture, we learn that delegation has a major trust factor. Those that have selected you to do a certain thing, they're expecting you to fulfill what's being asked. Not to pick and choose when you want to do it, how you want to do it, not necessarily the way you want to do it, but there are specificities. And there's a reward to obedience, just as there's technically a reward or consequence for disobedience. We also see here in this text that faithfulness is a prerequisite. Because if you can't keep your word and commitment and be faithful over a few things, you can't expect any ruler, any leader, any pastor, any boss, because many of us want to be promoted, but we don't meet the need or the qualifications for the position. You know, we get the title, but many of us fail to do the work that comes with the necessity of what denotes a promotion, because nobody has to necessarily give you anything. And longevity doesn't mean that you're apt to move up to the next level. Even kindergartners, my son is in kindergarten, and I don't expect the teacher to take him to 1st grade until he completes the assignments that he gave over here. And see, Jesus, I believe, he didn't need title holders. He doesn't need seat fillers, especially in business, because you want, like I need, for somebody to get the job done, especially when I can't be there. Or even in church, like the setting that we're sitting in here. The pastor doesn't need seat fillers. He needs somebody that's going to help fill the seats and win over the souls. But see, in today's time, we equate longevity with capability. But I believe that time exposes, and with God as the CEO of our lives, he promotes and he replaces accordingly. But the scripture also tells you that delegation means you will be held accountable. Because see, it read that the master returned and settled accounts with them. And lastly, in order to properly to be able to delegate, you must take account into a person's abilities. Because see, to one, he gave 5 talents. To another, he gave 2. To another, he gave 1, according to his ability. Meaning, and you got to be honest, delegation requires honesty with yourself and your people. You won't let a computer literate person run your media department. You won't have them working on a live when it's time to go live. Why? Because you're setting them up for failure. But many want the title and the opportunity to be seen until they realize the weight of which it has to be carried. And see, as a leader, we must recruit and then understand the levels of maturity and capability and skill set of those that we've chosen. You see, a baby's body and teeth isn't developed enough to process and digest the T-bone. But when that baby grows into a grown man, one of them teens, 14 looking 30, he's able to eat you out of house and home. And see, Moses, he didn't pick no babies. He chose the capable and the qualified. He put the right people in the right position to get the right results so he could take a break, so he wasn't burnt out, so he can go focus on what was important. so he could keep from breaking down. Because if you break down, you'll never truly break through, because enough will never, ever be enough. You see, one man can't be responsible for millions, but many men can learn to govern the masses. And lastly, the reason behind me saying all of this, and I'm going to bring this message to a close, is that there's an impact in the delegation of others, those that you've chosen to be in that position and to do what you've asked them to do. You see, delegation establishes unity and authority. It creates the opportunity to bond. It connects others with the vision, because nobody can truly connect when they feel disconnected. You see, in order to have this lamp on, we had to be able to plug into the source, but that required those two things to be touchable. Delegation allows for them to take ownership, and that's not necessarily just in the church, it's at the house. You know, teach kids, let them clean. Make them clean up their room. And, you know, there can be a reward that comes at the end, you know, maybe $1 or something. I didn't get paid to do chores, but they can own where they're at. If you have an office manager, let them manage the office. Let them get the flexibility to organize things how they want it done. Because people don't know you care until you show you care, but people truly won't want to put forth the effort until they know that you trust them. Delegation develops new abilities and reveals competencies, because iron sharpens iron. So if those that you've appointed to be able to follow your instructions truly adhere and connect to the vision, they'll be able to grow in the capacity in which you're entrusting them to be able to serve, and that can open and evoke additional opportunities and doors, because many of us truly don't know exactly what we possess, but servanthood unlocks those capabilities. And lastly, it makes people feel like they matter. It makes them feel like they're a part of them. It shows others that you believed in them, because the level of your connections speaks a lot about your character, speaks a lot about your level of integrity, speaks a lot about your level of capability and skill set. You are truly the company that you keep. And lastly, delegation establishes protocol on contribution, because people will do their part when they feel like they're part of the picture. So I leave this with you as I bring this message to a close, and I thank you for a time of sowing. A puzzle box is filled with many pieces, but if one goes missing, the bigger picture will never truly make sense, because you need the right pieces in the right places to get the right results. Delegate to elevate. There's power in elevation. I thank you for this time, for allowing me to sow. And we turn it over for the opportunity for you to be able to sow at this very moment.
We thank God for Minister Pitts and such a wonderful lesson. But you know what time it is. It's time to sow. And I ask you every single Wednesday to help us sow, and to sow at least a $10 offering. How can you do that? You can do it by Cash App, #CTBC 509, #CTBC 509, or you can go by PushPay, which is simply going to our website at ctbcsav.org, or you see our other web address at the bottom of the screen, cornerstoneBaptistChurch.org, or you can mail it here to the church, 509 West Gwinnett Street. Make sure you sow. And again, don't forget our address. At Well, we'll see you back tonight. And please always remember that better days are here. Most of all, better days, they are here. Bye-bye.